Did you hear about this? I saw a video of these armed people in Colorado, and it looked again like Judge Dredd 2012, like the big building, and then the one woman was in charge of the building, and Judge Dredd was there, and he was the law and all that. So it seemed kind of like that, except it was Venezuelan thugs who took over this apartment complex, and it was not more than one building. And then I've got more information about that. The governor basically said, "No, that didn't happen. You guys are liars." Which seems crazy. Like, he just dismissed it. So that's basically where we're at in the story. I don't know if the governor is actually going to address this, but there's Venezuelan gangs taking over apartment buildings in Aurora, Colorado. And that seems like a big deal, unless you're the governor of Colorado. All assets, let's talk about Canada, attacked Jagmeet Singh for a fall election. So Pierre Poilievre sent a letter yesterday, and that triggered his ministers and shadow cabinet to all start talking about how Jagmeet Singh is selfish and he should prioritize the Canadian public over his pension, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They want a fall election. It's not likely to happen. But I mean, at least they're doing the only thing they can do, right? Up till now, they weren't even attacking Jagmeet Singh, shaming him for doing what he's obviously doing with the pension thing. And now at least they're doing that. So is it going to work? I don't think so. But I'd love to be wrong, right? But we're still going to get the problem with a big majority is that they can do whatever they want, right? Look at what Justin Trudeau did with his majority. So, and now we're living with the consequences of that. Will Pierre Poilievre be a globalist with his majority, or will he try and serve Canadians? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. My fear is that he's more of a globalist, but I hope I'm wrong. Elle magazine put out a piece talking about breaking the glass ceiling and but they included men on the list. So breaking the glass ceiling, as explained by, I think it's Andy No, is something talking about women having difficulty climbing the corporate ladder because of male dominance, right? And now women can't even be like the top women in their piece in Elle magazine. Elle means like woman in French. It's like the female he, her, whatever it is, Elle, right? So it's wild. It's absolute. Glass ceiling has been broken for men in this women's magazine. Crazy. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We're going to start with elections and people going after Jagmeet Singh for trying to trigger a fall election by shaming Jagmeet Singh into it. And will it work? I don't think so. I think it's the only strategy they have at this point in time. That's the only thing that they can do. The other strategy actually that they could do is work on backbenching Liberals and backbenching NDP. Like, this isn't the party you signed up for. Look at the damage you're causing. Like, really worm in there, right? And really rail on them, target them with newspaper ads in their ridings, talking about the damage done, and really lay it on thick. Like, Justin Trudeau is betraying the country and your support of him is betraying the country. You are betraying the country. In fact, what you could do is the budget that you have, because the Conservatives have a war chest of money that each riding gets like $30,000 to fight an election. I think it's $30,000 roughly, right? And if you're and that's in addition to the fundraising you do in the riding. But I think that there's like a formula where if you fundraise in the riding, a portion of that goes back to the main party to make sure that underfunded places that don't fundraise as well, get at least $30,000. Does that make sense? So you fundraise, you send a portion back, but then during the election, you get that money and you can fundraise. Okay. So within that structure, the Conservatives could use their money and target the opposite candidate with these like awful headlines. And you could do it between now and whenever you want the election, right? So you could really put pressure, have the ads target NDP backbenchers, right? Have the ads target Liberal backbenchers and basically blame them for allowing this farce to continue, right? You go after Jagmeet Singh, sure, because he's the leader of the party, but then you go after the party to say you should revolt. These people are like wrecking the country. That's the other thing they could do. So at least they're doing some of it. Right. Michael Cooper says, sellout Singh may be the most pathetic party leader in Canadian history. He's consistently voted to cover up Prime Minister Trudeau's corruption and prop up his costly government. Jagmeet Singh is desperate for his $2.2 million pension. To pad his pocket, he sold out Canadians to the Trudeau nightmare. Pierre Poilievre, this is the letter he said yesterday. And there are other people who are also on board with this and attacking Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau for all of this. Is it happening? Is it going to happen? Is it going to work? Ryan's not convinced. He says the chances of a fall election in Canada are the same chances as Trudeau apologizing for everything he did to Canadians during COVID. Zero. Zero. So I don't know. There's skepticism. I'd love to be wrong. I'd love to be wrong. I'd love for there to be an election. I'd love to be wrong about Pierre Poilievre. I'd love for him to be a Canada First person who fixes all of the insanity that we're about to go through. I'm a realist too, and it doesn't seem likely at this point in time. So hope I'm wrong. True North is reporting a cohort of ministerial staffers in the Liberal Party of Canada have pulled their support from the government over its handling of the Israel-Hamas war, the majority of whom are of Middle Eastern descent. So it's weird. This seems like a contrived story. Like, I heard this story and I thought, what's going on here? And a bunch of Liberal staffers are saying, we're not going to support you in this election because of the Liberal Party's position on the Gaza-Palestinian war or the Gaza-Israel war. And these people are political staffers. So you don't have an opinion, political staffer. You either support the party and you help them by taking their money and supporting them to get reelected, or you don't. If you want to have a political say, you got to get your name in the ring, bud. Like, that's you're political staffers. You don't get to push the party by revolting. This seems contrived. It seems like a distractionary story. If I hired you to help me get elected and you disagreed with something that I said, if you were like, that man's a woman, I'd be like, okay, you're fired. See you later. Get out. And then I'd tell security to make sure that you were escorted out and you didn't sabotage anything on your way out. Right? Like, if you ideologically disagree with something that I say, then you're not supporting me and I'm not going to pay you anymore, and get out. See you later, all of you. Bye, you're all fired. Get out. See you later. See ya. Done. I don't know why I'm clicking so much, but that's how I feel. Like, conversation's done. There's nothing more to say. Like, you disagree with my policies. The only reason I'm paying you is to promote my policies. My policies are my policies because I'm the politician and you're a staffer. So if you don't support me, get out. Right? And not to say that I support the Liberals in anything, but this is it's a non-story. If I walked into the office and had the entire, like, if I was a political person and I walked into my office and I had my entire staff standing there saying, like, we're not going to support this. This is a man, Faye Johnson here is, or sorry, this is a woman, Faye Johnson here is to bolster our opinion of this. I'd say, you're all fired. Get out. Like, I'm not going to have this conversation. I don't care what you think. You're here to support me. I pay you to support me. If you have a concern with me, maybe I'm like cracked, maybe I've lost my mind or something like that, then you bring that to me privately. You don't do that in a big block of people saying, you know, us and Faye here think that you're being a bigot. Like, get out. Get out, get out, get out. Right? Like, there's no. And so it seems contrived. This does not seem like a legitimate story. It seems like a contrived story, something to keep us within a wizard circle. It's just something that's being reported, and I think it's stupid. So I'll tell you that. National Post is reporting this. Progressives want to control our lives, and Canadians have had it. Today, the culture wars are between those who want to restrict liberties and those who want to be left alone. And yeah, I'm in the latter version of that. I want to be left alone, and the government desperately wants to do everything they can to control everything about our behavior, right? Canadians' behavior. After a decade or so, progressives are on the defense in Canada and elsewhere because regular people, as in those who are not activist weirdos, are tired of the agenda to control every aspect of our lives. Point this out to a progressive, and they will deny that anyone's life is being interfered with and claim only some far-right monster would think otherwise. They can't believe that there are people out there who share a different view. They don't understand how this could be, but progressive governments are trying to control our lives in ways big and small, and in ways that range from the subtle to a punch in the face. In Canada, the federal government's environmental policies are the most obvious example of this interference. The Liberals have banned plastic straws and plastic bags. Even compostable bags are banned in grocery stores because they resemble plastic. They look like plastic? No. Such bans are pointless irritants that make shopping more expensive and life slightly less enjoyable as paper straws dissolve in one's drink. I will tell you, so grocery stores used to give away, and still do in the United States and other sane countries, they gave away the grocery bags. So you would buy more. The grocery bags cost them 10 cents, but represent how the capacity of the bag is how many liters? 25 liters or something like that? 25 cubic liters? So I think it's measured that way. I could be wrong. But the products that could fill that bag cost a lot more than 10 cents. They make profit more than 10 cents on that, right? So they give you the bag so that you can fill it with products that they make money on. They give you the bag so you can carry your stuff. When the Canadian government banned the plastic bags, they couldn't do that anymore, and their margins dropped because people stopped buying as much. It didn't have as much to do with the inflation as you'd think. People just couldn't carry it, so they didn't buy it anymore. For real, it's crazy, but it's true. It's not just about the consumer side; it's about the business side of things. And so they had to figure out how to solve that problem. And I mean, I don't know that they have really. I really don't know that they have. So and the paper straws are an absolute nightmare. Like the cards in restaurants. I don't go to restaurants often, but I do go often enough. I try and do a lunch a week with people just to be going out and stuff because I like to see the world. So when I'm out, if they have paper straws, I'll do a comment card that just says, "Please bring back plastic straws. Paper straws are terrible," and they wreck the experience or whatever. And I'm finding more paper straw or more plastic straws, right? So that's interesting. Harvey's had plastic straws for a while, and I thought that they were holding out, and I went recently and they had paper straws, and I was terribly disappointed. Anyway, back to this. People might dismiss these concerns as simply minor inconveniences, but this is how most people experience government policy, by being forced to replace their bag of plastic straws so that they were already reusing, or plastic bags that they were already reusing, with more expensive, less useful options. Next up, the Liberals are exploring options to bring in environmental regulations for clothing. The cost of clothes has actually gone down in recent years, so leave it to Ottawa to look for ways to bring the cost back up and to limit options. There's also the plan to essentially force Canadians to purchase electric vehicles that nobody would otherwise want through government mandates to phase out the sale of gas-powered cars and trucks. And there's more examples, right? So the government and the progressives are overstepping their jurisdiction and their welcome, and people are sick and tired of it. And I hope that the backlash smarts. Jordan Peterson often talks about lying as pulling a ruler, like holding a ruler in front of your face and then bending the ruler away from your face, right? It's going to take work. It's going to take effort to maintain that situation, right? And if you let go of the ruler, I mean, you're going to keep hold with the left hand, right? You're going to keep holding it in front of your face, presumably. You let go with the pressure that you're holding, it's going to snap back, and it's probably going to hurt when it hits you, right? And so I think that analogy holds true, and I hope that the backlash smarts. I hope it hits them square in the nose. Here's Kamala Harris, and this matters because carbon taxes are what's happening in Canada. Kamala talks about this as getting rid of bad behavior. This is kind of a nudge stuff, talking about it this way. Like you're a child and like you need to be told what good behavior and bad behavior is. Like Kamala Harris is the last person we need to be lectured on or lectured by for good behavior, right? Like heels up Harris, right? Here you go.
There will also be a carbon fee. Mm-hmm. And that money, a lot of it is going to go to the communities, and this is part of my environmental justice approach to the issue. We're going to do it in a way that is about what we've always done with industry, which is to say that there has to be some connection between the fee and bad behaviors, and there has to be, and that we have to monitor whether it's going to be passed on to consumers. But I'm going to tell you that should never be the reason not to actually put a fee, and in particular, carbon fee. There will also be
She's not saying tax, she's saying fee. It's not a tax, it's a fee. It's not a tax, it's a levy. It's the same thing. It's exactly the same. A levy is a tax. Yes, right? Inflation is taxation as well. Ridiculous. It's all theft. I think that's the title. We're going to hear from Kamala in this series as well, which is kind of why I ended the election series on that. Carbon taxes, carbon fees, carbon taxes, same thing, right? Are part of the NWO full world order to control us. They can't have us being energy independent. If we're energy independent, we don't need them, right? And so they want to control the energy, and carbon fees, taxes, are exactly how to do that, and part of how to do that, part of the mosaic on how to do that. And Canada's already got it, and we're already normalized. And so Kamala wants to bring it in. Kamala is Biden Biden is Justin. Justin is Starmer. They're all the same, right? Like all of them are doing exactly the same thing, lockstep. Have you noticed it yet? I hope so. David says, my jaw dropped. Let's talk about free speech. My jaw dropped. Returning journalist Anthony Boldell piece on Brazil closing down X and terminating free speech. The headline, which may not be his, reads, Brazil judge takes on Musk's X as fake news crusade ramps up. What is fake about facts? It's unclear which person is the victim of perceived attacks on democracy. X may be defying court orders, but are they fair? No mention Lula has banned former President Jair Bolsonaro from standing in the next election by Lula. Did you analyze whether the investigation into Bolsonaro over so-called fake news holds any water, or is it a political smear job and witch hunt? The tone seems a thinly veiled attack on Elon Musk. So they're moving to blame Elon Musk for spreading misinformation on X, and that's the reason they have to shut it down. But it's nonsense. It's absolute bullshit. Mike Benz offers some color into this, and he's on the Brianna Morello show, and she says, is the United States involved in Brazil's banning X? Mike Benz joins Brianna to break down the latest. So this is 10 minutes, but basically they want either to control it through sanctions or agreements with government, and Facebook has bent the knee, and so have all of the other ones, Instagram, all the rest. They've all bent the knee, right? X says no, but again, it seems a little bit shadowboxy to me. It seems like when they need a hero, the hero will be provided, but we'll still control it. Anyway, they want to control X along with everything else, and they're using this, we have to maintain people's safety and what lack of knowledge around misinformation that's spread on X that we don't want. It's all about control. Elon Musk is responding to Brandon. Brandon says, on Brazilian Justice de Morales' over shutting down X, the text of his 51-page decision is far more concerning and sweeping than the headlines suggest. And Elon Musk says, we will begin publishing a long list of Alexander Morales' crimes, or de Morales' crimes, along with the specific Brazilian laws that he broke tomorrow. Obviously, he does not need to abide by U.S. law, but he does need to abide by his own country's laws. He is a dictator and a fraud, not a justice. So it looks like Elon Musk is going to expose him by publishing something to expose him on X. So that'll be interesting, right? His going after X ultimately results in X publishing things that may bring him down. That'll be fun. That'll be fun to watch. Stay tuned tomorrow. Actually, it'll be 2 days, because if it's published tomorrow and then I have to report on it, so it'll take me a little time to disseminate that. But if it happens, we'll see. I'm still waiting on Putin to tell the United Nations about the biolabs in Ukraine. I'm sure that's going to be fireworks any day now. Any day now. Elon Musk again says freedom of speech is under massive attack around the world. Here's Kamala Harris talking about, again, good behavior, and President Trump wasn't well behaved on Twitter, and so we have to take it away his privilege on Twitter. She is not your parent. The government is not your parent. Twitter is not some party that you want to go to. X is not some party you want to go to. Free speech in the public square should not be interfered with by the government, but they're trying to make it seem like, oh, it's for your safety, Johnny. Don't you do that. Don't you listen to your friends, right? Like, I don't think so. These people have lost their minds.
When you look at what he's been tweeting today, directed at the whistleblower, directed at so many people, I frankly think that based on this and all we've seen him do before, including attacking members of Congress, that his Twitter account should be suspended. He is irresponsible with his words in a way that could result in harm to other people. And so the privilege of using those words in that way should probably be taken from him. Should probably be taken from him. Should probably be taken from him. He has lost his privileges, and it should be taken down. And the bottom line is that you can't say that you have one rule for Facebook and you have a different rule for Twitter. The same rule has to apply, which is that there has to be a responsibility that is placed on these social media sites to understand their power. They are directly speaking to millions and millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
When they say there's no guarantee of hate around freedom of speech around hate speech or misinformation around our democracy, who defines what hate speech is? Who defines what misinformation is? Who defines what truth is, right? These people are saying that man could be a woman, right? And how is that truthful? How is that not misinformation? These people say safe and effective. How is that truthful? Because it's not. So weird, right? Here's just a little bit more.
I know you wrote to Twitter and the CEO, Jack Dorsey, and asked him to take away the president's Twitter handle, his account. How is that not a violation of free speech? I mean, the president has the same rights that you have, that I have, and how would that not just be a slippery slope? Or
I've heard that argument, but here's the thing, Jake. First of all, a corporation, which is what Twitter is, it does not have it has obligations, and in this case, Twitter has terms of use policy. And their terms of use dictate who receives the privilege of speaking on that platform.
Listen, I've heard of the First Amendment, but the terms of use on X might supersede a presidential First Amendment thing. I'm just saying. Yeah, right. What an idiot. Honestly. And this guy's sitting here looking at her like she's somewhat like credible. I don't know why I'm out of focus here. Hold on a second. Do you really want a president in the United States who believes that the X terms of service supersede the First Amendment? John says the Zuckerberg story was big. The White House pressured Meta to illegally censor factual information about COVID and Hunter's laptop. Even bigger, the person responsible for this was former director of digital strategy Rob Flaherty. He's now Kamala's deputy campaign manager. Ha! Well, isn't that interesting, right? So Meta has turned on the government a little bit anyway, and we're finding out just who is coordinating this, and it seems like goes all the way to Kamala, all the way up to the top, which is, again, not surprising. Michael Schellenberger says today's 1984 type totalitarianism is more dangerous than the tanks and torture type of totalitarianism in the past. There's no need to rig elections or overthrow governments if the ruling party, the media, and the state-sponsored NGOs control the information environment. And they do. And they do, right? So pretty scary stuff. And this is talking about Brazil, but it extrapolates out to the United States as well. Scary stuff. They don't want free speech. If they have their plan relies on censorship. Their plan relies on them saying there's a monkeypox epidemic and you need to get vaccinated. And you going, oh, the government's updated our vaccination schedule again. I've scheduled everybody for a vaccination. Let's go get vaccinated. Oh, it looks like your father's dead. Oh, well, I guess that happens. Good thing we were vaccinated or we'd all be dead. Like, this is what they want, it seems? Like, Darshan Maharaja, let's move on. Let's talk about taxes and misuse of tax dollars. The free speech, I feel like, is all-encompassing. It does touch on a lot of the rest of the world, but Canada's in the thick of it too, right? We're in the maze just as much as everybody else. Not to say that we're lost. We self-put ourselves in this maze, and now people are panicking, right? Because now it doesn't seem like we can find our way back to sanity, right? We did this to ourselves, though, as a society, I think. Anyway, let's move on, talking about misuse of tax dollars. Darshan says, further to my post yesterday, which is below here, he says, per capita GDP, which is gross domestic product, after adjusting for inflation, is negative for 5 quarters in a row. But we're not in a recession because the overall GDP is positive. We are growing the economy at the expense of individual prosperity. So your personal GDP is down by a lot, but your overall economy is up. And so the overall economy is what qualifies for whether we're in a recession or not. And Darshan says the fundamental problem with Canada's current immigration policy is that it seeks to grow the economy via increasing vastly the pool of cheap labor. This approach is guaranteed to erode and destroy prosperity. Only a few get to enrich themselves at the expense of everyone else. So it's interesting because this is a weird stagflation, but this is what I was talking about the other day. If we turned off all of the incoming people, what do you think that would do to our real GDP? if currently, when you bring in all of these people, the economy is sent all of these faulty signals that wouldn't be there without these people, like demand for cars, demand for housing, demand for all of these other things, that artificially stimulates the economy. But without them, we'd have a crash. We'd have a massive, massive crash, right? And so I've been saying, what happens is people say, I'm going to fix the problems. They get in there and somebody explains to them the extent of the problems and they go, oh, holy shit, like we're on the cusp of a collapse. And instead of saying we have to go through this in order to fix the problem, they say, let's kick the can down the road. Do you think we can kick it 4 years? Do you think we can kick it 8? And so let's let the next guy deal with this, because the growth in the economy, I think, is mostly attributed to the immigration. Turn that off and you have negative GDP for 5 straight quarters, right? Negative personal GDP, right? So your personal growth, per capita GDP declines, right? So bad. It seems bad. Remember when Japan lost a decade because of real estate bubble? I think that's what it was in the 90s. They had this real estate bubble that took all of their earnings that the stock market in Japan gained over those 10 years and just wiped them out. Gone. See you later. Lost decade. Same appears to be shaping up in Canada. Daniel says Canada's approaches a lost decade. Real GDP per capita is now at 2014 to 2017 levels. No economic growth on a per person basis in almost 8 years. No improvement in standard of living in the same time. So everything is the same as it was or worse, and things break down over time, right? So if you had something 8 years ago, well, you got to get a new one, right? So lower standard of living. Nick says Trudeau's carbon tax hurts Canadians. The price of gas in Georgia is $2.62 a gallon. Excuse me. The price of gas in Ontario is $1.45 a liter. There's almost 4 liters in a gallon, right? So we're approaching $5 a gallon, and they're at half. Why? Milk is the same, half the price. The last time crude was this low, a liter of gas cost 90 cents in Ontario. Trudeau has added carbon taxes and has devalued our dollar with deficits. So the carbon tax adds 50 cents to the price of gas after all is said and done. And somebody was saying, oh, price of gas is super cheap in Guelph. It's down to 148. 148, go fill up your cars. It's 148. I was like, that is a stupidly expensive price. Like, unbelievably, stupidly expensive. And it's not cheap. And don't let them fool you pretending that it's cheap, because not cheap. It's not cheap. And it's very problematic, because the more expensive the inputs, the more expensive the outputs. And so you make inputs expensive with taxes and lack of efficiency, then the outputs are expensive and people have to spend more. And that's what's happening, right? And so the value of your money goes down, because what you can purchase with the money goes down, because the carbon taxes makes everything more expensive, including gas, energy, and everything, right? And so this is an ongoing attack on Canadians, an economic attack, and for some reason we can't see it or respond to it. We think it's a normal everyday tax. I mean, how much of our money goes to taxation? Between 50 and 70%? It's incredible. Like 50% is payroll tax. Do you know why it's payroll? Do you know why they take it off your payroll without you thinking about it? Because if you got all of your money, you would never give it to them. That's why. Because until they implemented the payroll tax, the rates of people actually paying tax was very low. In Greece, before they entered the EU, and even after they entered the EU, it was standard to not pay your taxes. Like, people just didn't pay their taxes. And they printed money to deal with it. So they devalued their currency to deal with it. They're like, oh yeah, we know that people aren't paying their taxes. That's all right. We'll just print some money. It's cool. And I'm like, I'm not getting deep into this or anything like that, but yeah, that's what happened. And then when Greece entered the EU and Germany had to bail them out a bunch of times, they were like, you guys have to pay your taxes. And Greece was like, eh. But do we though? Thanks for the bailout. Sam Cooper says, if you missed this exclusive from the Bureau, the chart shows FinTrack Canada has total visibility on massive fentanyl laundering into Canada's big banks. But I believe Justin Trudeau and his office and cabinet would have to make this a priority RCMP enforcement concern, or nothing happens. So I'm reading about Stamler, somebody who watches the show sent me a book about a lot of financial crimes in Canada. Well, it's not specifically financial crimes. It's the intersection of politics and financial crimes and the RCMP in Canada. And I think that it's very interesting, because the history of all this goes back to at least the 60s, probably before that. And in the 60s, the RCMP was coming up together, like they were setting up their not cyber crimes, they're monetary crimes. It was like a sophisticated crime unit going after bankruptcies, going after money schemes that weren't obvious. So more white collar criminals rather than your everyday criminal. White collar, right? Yeah. So within the context of that, there used to be police officers that investigated, who were charged with kind of investigating the government, et cetera, and keeping a check and balance on that. But it gets very muddy, and it seems like the RCMP at the beginning didn't have any, like they didn't really have jurisdiction. They didn't really have any tools. They didn't even really know how to make a case that this was like doing these financial crimes was illegal, right? Like up until that point, it was basically, it's not our jurisdiction, so forget about it, you know? And then when it became their jurisdiction, they're like, yeah, we can't prove this though. So I'm only I think I'm in the 4th chapter. But it's been interesting so far. And the history of these political, the history of money crimes and Canada not responding appropriately to it goes back a long time. And so that's interesting to me. But I think that, one, the RCMP should probably be disbanded because they're doing a piss poor job and they've been corrupted by politicians. And 2, we should have an independent police force that has nothing to do with politicians, that is tasked with making sure the politicians aren't behaving in criminal ways, because it seems like they are behaving in criminal ways at this point in time, and there's no real way to stop them. Like, you know how the military police have military police, like JAG, and then the warrant officer doesn't outrank the colonel, but he can arrest the colonel. You know what I'm saying? The warrant officer can't tell the colonel what to do, but he can say, Colonel, you're not allowed to murder that woman. You're under arrest, right? And then like bingo, bango, bongo. So in the same way, we should have a group of people whose job it is to say, you're honorable blah, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you're not allowed to Raj Gruel, you're not allowed to make money off of these gambling things, or you're not allowed to do this and you're under arrest now. You know what I'm saying? We've been investigating you since you became an MP, and here's what we know, and you're under arrest, right? Like, why don't we have that? We should. We kind of did, although I'm not that far in the book yet, so I'll let you know when I understand how it got abolished. But fundamentally, there's a lot of fentanyl money laundering through Canada's big banks, and nobody seems to care. And that's a theme. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful